Welcome to Sell Like You, the ultimate sales podcast that will teach you how to make sales your superpower, transform your mindset, and in doing so, explode your sales beyond your wildest dreams. I'm Harriet Meller, and over the last 17 years, I've helped hundreds of top companies around the world, including my own, make more money and qualify more leads using simple strategies that work. In this podcast, you'll learn how I generated over 10 million in annual sales, along with the sales techniques, processes, and tools that will work for you to generate more dream-aligned clients and scale your business beyond what you thought was possible. If you're sick of the boring, outdated, and pushy sales tactics of the past, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Sell Like You podcast. And today I have my lovely friend, Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Yes. And we have done episodes before, and today is going to be slightly different, isn't it? So the aim for today is that we've just come off the back of our Clicks to Clients workshops. And before we're about to move them online. So we're moving online as of July. So we're really excited to be able to support people outside of Perth, which is on our mission, aren't we, for sure, to get there?
Yes, we're going global.
We're going global, watch out. And so we wanted to bring this episode really today to share a little bit about how we've done the workshop, about the framework, about some of the results, because I think really we wanted to demystify this whole ads and spending and converting of leads. And so we want to do a little bit of that today for those that are interested. And so do you want to kick us off maybe, Jordan, to share us a little bit about Clicks to Clients and really maybe about the framework and I guess really what's gone into the workshop and why we've done it?
Yes. So, okay, we'll try to keep this a condensed version because we can talk about this all day. So the Clicks to Clients workshop came about because myself and Harriet really understood the, I hate, using this word too much, but the synergy between sales and marketing. And for myself, I work a lot in the marketing space, the paid marketing space, and I felt like there was this huge gap where people didn't understand the sales side either side. And Harriet, you obviously found the same where you were helping people with the sales, but they didn't necessarily know the paid side of things and generating those leads. So we developed the Clicks to Clients workshop, and we have developed a framework which is effectively 4 stages of how to generate leads, convert the leads, and do so in a way that is, I always talk about this tap that you can just turn on and off when you want some more leads. So easiest way to explain it, step 1 is all about understanding your audience, and that's where Harriet's expertise comes in, talking about your ideal client and replicating those people and understanding who they are, what they want, what we can give them, the problems that they're having that we can solve. Step 2 is then all about what we're going to do from an ad perspective. So how we're going to target those people with the technology we have available, what we're going to say. And really, I think the biggest thing in step 2 is understanding what you're going to give people in exchange for their email, phone number, name, everything about them. Step 3 is then executing your campaign, managing the campaign, understanding, what budget you need. And we will, I'm sure, talk about that today. And really setting that up, whether using Meta or LinkedIn, getting those ads out there and in people's feeds. And then step 4, very, very important, is actually following up those leads. So I'm sure we're going to cover all of this today, but step 4 is really cool. You've got the leads. Now what?
What do you do with this bucket of opportunity that's right in front of you?
Yes.
Yes. And I think, the 4 steps, because, it can be, we can overcomplicate things. And I think when you're trying to do something and you're following all these different steps, is that often, people may have already worked out who their ideal client is and maybe, knows what value they can add. Yeah. But then when it comes to then setting up an ad campaign, they're like, oh, what have I done? And how is this actually going to work for me? And I think one of the goals there really for us was around lifting the hood on a campaign and being like, look, it's actually not that difficult when you know what you're doing. And I think that goes for everything in life, right? You can look at something and be like, I could never make that dish. But, when you've watched somebody, you've watched a video and you've actually had time to practice it, you get really good at it. And I think, that's been the results of the guests that, we've had along to to these workshops. And I think if we look down to those 4, that third step of actually finding the campaign and really building on that, we've obviously gone through Meta and LinkedIn, and we're going to try and cover both today. I think it's ambitious, but I think we can do it. So with regards to that, then what would you say is the easiest or maybe even, I mean, I think I know the answer to that one, but I think most people do if they've tried to do either, but I'm going to let you answer that.
Yeah.
But also secondly, what is it like, how do we decide what platform to be on? Because I think that's maybe the bit that I think everyone's kind of, which one do I go on? Where do I spend the time? Do I spend the time on both? So maybe your thoughts on that would be really interesting.
Yes, well, I mean, to answer the first question, I think anyone that's jumped into meta advertising before knows that it is not the most user-friendly interface. They have taken inspiration from Excel spreadsheets in the 1990s and really gone full into that space. So I do think LinkedIn is a little bit easier. And I'm sure anyone that did the workshops, I know we had some people do both workshops. And kind of see which channel they preferred, and they will 100% back me up, and that LinkedIn is an easier one to tackle. But I think the answer to the question of what one is better or how to choose or, which one is going to work for your business most of the time comes down to your targeting. If you are, typically I would say most B2B companies, service-based business, SaaS, tech, who are trying to get in contact with, the sales manager, the project manager, the product manager, the person that is buying products or services for a business use case, I would typically say you're going to be advertising on LinkedIn. If you are even in a service-based industry but talking to consumers, so some examples we had was interior design, right? That is going to work really, really well on Instagram and Facebook because we're talking direct to consumers who are not necessarily making a business decision, they're making a personal decision. So that's, I think there's always a bit of a crossover, and sometimes you can test the other channels and it might work well, but normally I would say B2B, you're looking at LinkedIn, and if you're talking direct to consumers, you're normally doing meta advertising.
Yeah, awesome. And I think that is a simple way because there are so many variables in everything, especially sales and marketing. There's so many more. It could be this way, it could be this way. Yeah. And I think giving those, that breakdown there, I think certainly, gives it a little bit more clarity. And I guess really, and that's really where you and I have really connected on, is because I've been very much LinkedIn and you've been very much Meta, and we've kind of done a sprinkle of both in between. And I think that's really staying true to who we are and also who we want to reach out to, but knowing that if we ever want to turn the dial and actually go out there and then try a different platform, we now know the methodology and the framework, because all that's changing, although if you are going from LinkedIn to Meta, I'm sorry. And if you're going the other way, then you're welcome. Yeah. But the methodology and the framework really doesn't change, does it?
No. And I think that's, I know we had, like I said, some people do both. And everything around, step 1, step 2, step 4 was very, very similar. It was just that step 3 of, cool, how do we actually execute this? But the thinking, the logic, the strategy behind it all can apply to any channel. If you want to go and look at Snapchat ads or YouTube ads or anything, like the strategy still applies.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, something that, you can take with you wherever you are going in business, which is really cool. And so we had some great results from the workshops, which is why we're now taking this online, which is why we're here to share some of those wins. But what do you believe is the difference between someone that saw success and somebody that didn't?
I mean, and there could be other things at play here as well, but I think the main reason that we saw the difference between those people that came to the follow-up call with great success and those people that maybe didn't see as much success as they had hoped is that they were not really thinking about the value they were bringing to their audience. It's something that we, really hammer home. I think we probably tell people about 20 times in the day, think about this, think about this, think about this. But some people were kind of jumping ahead a couple steps. And so a big mistake a lot of people do is they say, no, I just want sales. I need 100 new customers by the end of the month. And they're trying to go out with completely cold audiences saying like, hey, buy now. And this person doesn't even know you exist. They don't know that they've got a problem. Like they're so unaware of what you do and who you are and how you can help them, that just putting an ad in front of them and saying, here you go, buy now, is never going to work. And so I think the biggest difference between the people that saw success and the people that maybe didn't see as well as success as others is just that kind of being 4 steps ahead and needing to kind of come back and say, okay, what's the first touch point we have with someone to kind of warm them up and give them value and show them, hey, we're trustworthy. We're here to help you. We're not just here to sell to you.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest difference, I think.
And as well, like if I relate that back to like the sales scenario, is that a lot of the time in sales when I go out there and I support teams that maybe haven't been doing as much lead gen, maybe they're doing a lot of referral or inbound, when it comes to outbound and then they say to me it's not working, I'm like, okay, talk me through the process. And they've sent one email. And it's very similar to that one stage ad effectively, which is like buy now or, register here or sign up here. Like, hold on, I didn't even know that you existed, and you've kind of just been thrown, in my face at this moment.
Yep.
So give me something that's going to stop and make me go, oh, that's quite interesting. And it's, in my world, I'd call it a transitional call to action, rather than a direct call to action, because it's saying, hey, try my thing, or hey, see some value here. And it's really then taking that step back. And I think often we jump that step in marketing and in sales where we go, we just want the thing. And I then relate it back to dating, and I always come back to dating, and I always think, especially with my younger crowd, I'm like, okay, if you met someone at a bar, would you ask them to marry you? Like day one, they're like, no, it'd be weird. I'm like, okay, would you ask them to be your girlfriend or boyfriend? Like, no, okay, all right. So let's take it a step back. Let's maybe talk to them. Let's maybe ask their name. Yeah. Let's maybe consider buying them a drink. Let's maybe, just chat. Let's go bowling. Yeah.
It's a great metaphor.
Or whatever anybody does today. Yeah. Laser tag back in my day.
Harriet's clearly not a Gen Z.
Sorry, Gen Z. I'm bowling and laser tagging right here. And so I think it's really just about defining those stages and actually going through it. And I think, giving the example where we were able to see and really show how the different stages really work as well, because we're all about testing. And I think, if you've been to any of workshops with Jordan says test about 1 million times. So, but you are right, because without the testing, you don't know what's going to work for you. You don't know what's going to work for your audience. And if this is the first time following our framework or just trying ads anyway, it can be scary, because I think, I want to talk about pricing and about budget, because it's such a big one. I think we had so many light bulb moments, with our workshops, because often when it comes down to that budgeting and that pricing section is that we're so afraid to spend the dollar, and we want a lead for $1, we want a lead for $4, we want and we look at it and we're like, we need to get it under 10. And so talk to us a little bit about kind of how you explain the budgeting side of things when it comes to ads.
Yeah. So, and I will steal a little bit of what Harriet says as well here. I think the thing with budgeting is people, like you said, they're really scared to spend. Especially when they are, selling something that's $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, to go into that and think I'm going to be able to achieve that with a $50 ad spend is unrealistic. And I'm never going to step into a room and say, you have to spend all this money to generate results. But yeah, you do have to spend some money to generate results. We can't get everything for $1. And I know Harriet walked into the room and said, when we were talking about budgeting, if I said to you, hey, give me 5,000 and I'll give you 10,000 back, would you do it? And everyone was like, yeah, absolutely, I would. Yeah, take my money. And so that same logic applies. And we go through kind of a budgeting calculator and figuring out for people, okay, well, what can you spend? And when people use this calculator, they're really kind of, surprised as to how much they can actually spend on a lead. So we're thinking about, okay, cool. Let's say as an example, we convert 5 people and those 5 people spend $500 each. Great. That gives us $2,500. And we work backwards and we say, cool, out of the conversations, how many people converted, and work back. And it's a nice little Excel formula, and it gives us a cost per lead. And normally that cost per lead that you can comfortably spend could be up to like $50. But people are so scared of seeing that big number because we're just afraid. I think it's the being afraid of the unknown. And putting money out there, just not knowing what's going to happen. So I think, actually using some kind of formula and saying, okay, I know what I need to achieve. I know how many people I can convert, and therefore I know how much I can spend on a lead, and backing yourself and saying, cool, if I know that that's the max I can spend, how many leads do I want? Times that by the max, and that's my budget. And that's, I think for me, that's probably my favorite part of the workshop. Because so many people have never done that before. You ask them how much they want to spend, and they've just kind of plucked a number that they feel comfortable with. It's like $100, $200, $500, whatever it may be. But it's just about backing yourself with data, of course. We love data.
Love a bit of data.
But backing yourself to be like, I know what I can spend. And so if I spend that, I know what I'm going to make. Mm-hmm. And that's, to me, one of the most important parts of this process.
Because it allows you to then see success, or at least define success. Because often, if we look and we want to share a little bit about the stories of those that were able to share with us how many leads they generated and how, cost per lead, etc. But, some of those got them under $10. And actually, when we did the calculation, I think one of them was like, I would pay $1,000, per lead. And if they're getting them for like $9, it's like, okay, well, they've won like 10 times over, 100 times over. Yeah. And so it's really then about just defining what does that need to look like for them. And then also then working your way through and going, well, okay, well, you don't have to spend $1,000 today per lead. And how about you just put $100 in? Test, do what Jordan says, test. And then how about then you do then, a couple $100 and then see then what the results are from there. Because as you're moving through let's say, using the example of 23 leads, when we look at 23 leads and then you go through the follow-up stages, which is certainly my favorite part. Because I'm like, we've got leads now, what should we do with them? But once we've got those leads and we're actually, working our way through, and then you go, okay, well, of those leads, I've got 6 that are super hot. And then I've got 3 that have said yes to a meeting or yes to a next stage, whatever that looks like to you. You then go, okay, well, now I've closed those from round 1. Now I've got the income, the revenue. I'm going to put $1,000 in the next one, because if I got this from $143, imagine what I would get at $1,000. And it's just giving them really the knowledge and the insight, but then also then going, but it's okay to still only spend $150 or $200 or $10, whatever that may be. And let's see, what happens. And I think, we shared some examples of how we generated leads for our workshops, and we'll do that again, changing it into the online world. And I think being able to give examples and show that this is what you can spend, but you don't have to spend that. And I think also the challenge comes that when you've done ads previously and not known, and I've been one of them. Years ago when I had the spa, we were running ads through Google. I had no idea what I was doing, and I spent a few $1,000s, no idea what I was doing. And so for me, I would be one of the candidates back then that would have said they don't work, or they do work, but they're really expensive, because we don't really know what it is that we were actually trying to achieve. And I think back then we didn't have a defined success metric. We didn't know how much we were prepared to pay per lead. And I think it just becomes very uncertain. You become very uncertain around, I'm spending time and money, but what does this need to look like? And I think the flip side in my world of sales, where I'm like, hey, let's go out and let's find organic leads and let's actually reach out to direct people we want to work with. We often don't attribute time to money. And although we know, time is money, we're not necessarily directly correlating that. So that if you're spending, 3 hours every day or every week, doing business development, hats off to you, because we need to chat, because I want to hear those stories. But for those, that are actually doing that, how much is that costing, and how many leads are you generating from that? And if you're effective and if you're using, my framework to be able to do that, then again, we should be able to attribute both of them. And complementary is lead gen and direct organic leads. And I think that's the beauty of what it is that we're teaching, is you can turn it on and turn it off, but why not just keep those value-driven opportunities running without having to pay for them as well? So it gives them both sides as well, would you say? Yeah,
I totally agree. And I think, like you said, it's really interesting to me that people will happily go out and go for an hour and a half coffee with someone and have a chat and follow up with email, and which is great. And what the conversion rate is probably much higher on that. 100%. I won't say probably, it's definitely much higher doing it that way. But if you've allocated 3 hours of your time, and even if your hourly rate's $100, you've effectively allocated $300 to that lead. Now, if that lead converts, amazing. You're going to be very happy with that $300 you've invested. But we're so scared to invest $300 into ads, which could give us 30 leads, 40 leads. We'll talk about some of the results, but most people that did the workshop went away and spent $100 to $150 on their ads, just as a test, which is a great way to do it. I'm a big advocate for saying, test it, get some results, and then scale. As much as I'm like, back yourself, go all in, test, as Harriet knows that I like to do. Test first, get the results, and then go forth. And so if you're willing to go and have a coffee with someone for an hour to potentially get them as a lead or a customer, take that same value and invest it into ads. And just, like you said, have them both running. I don't think one is better than the other or one is more cost efficient. In a marketing background, the more different avenues you can have, the more ways that you can be reaching out to people, the more touch points you can have with people, the better. And what I actually find a lot of the time, and just going on a little bit of a tangent, but ads can sometimes actually really help your like organic sales activity as well, because let's say, as an example, you meet someone and you have a conversation with them, and then the next day they see an ad and they're like, oh, this person's legit. I was just talking to them and now I've seen them pop up in my feed. It's that like social proof, credibility. So they actually work very, very well together, go hand in hand, as we know.
As we do know. I mean,
why we're here.
I mean, we're not surprised at these results, but maybe you might be if you're trying them. And so if we look then at that value piece, so, we said before around the fact that budget is one area, but also then being too many steps ahead.
Yes.
And this really comes back to then the value piece of what we can actually offer. And it needs to be compelling enough to stop somebody in their tracks, but also then give them enough reason to say, hey, we want your name and email, as an example. And I think now, everyone is much more savvy of where they actually put their details. And, for me, if I get kind of too far down that section of information you're gathering, I each time I'm like, is this worth it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? No, it's not, because I've got now down to the part where you now want my, address and fingerprints. And I'm like, no, too much. But if it's something I really wanted, you can have everything. Because it sounds too good to be true. And I want to see whether it actually is. And so with our with the guidance that, that we gave, what do you see as being really effective for those that want to try it out at home and at home? I sound like, Blue Peter. Oh gosh, now I really am. No, I really am. I'm a millennial and not a Gen Z. But, if it's something, they want to try that for themselves within their business, what would you recommend? How would you recommend defining what that PDF or download should actually look like?
Yeah. And, well, I'll actually give my answer, but then I will ask you a question, because I think I know that you have good insights on this as well. I think the biggest thing from an ads perspective, I'll answer. When people are scrolling, they are very passive. And so your job is to stop someone in their tracks. Like, that PDF has to be something that they're like, wow, I really want that. Like, that's super interesting. That speaks to me. And this comes down to you understanding your customer. What is going to stop them in their tracks? What problems are they currently having? What are they constantly saying? Oh, I don't know how to do this. I wish I had this. Like, this would make my life a lot easier. And again, I hate myself, but you can test. You can test a whole heap of different things. It can be a template. It can be a guide. It can be the ultimate guide to X, Y, Z, 7 steps to doing this. I think ads. I know Harry talks a lot about this. People value time and money. So if your PDF, can be something that saves people time, saves people money, gives people easy ways to do things. I know one of the examples we had in class was kind of like 10 steps to growing your Instagram, or how to get, your first 100 followers in 5 days. Those kind of people, I guess people want those quick wins. That's all people want. It's like, give me the results tomorrow. Yeah. So I think that's a really important thing, is how can you make someone stop scrolling and say, wow, this is exactly what I want. But I will hand back over to you, because I know the question then you need to ask is like, well, how do I know what people want? And I could probably try explain it, but I know you'll do a much better job at it. So yeah, I guess the question for you is then, how do you know what people want? Like, what insights can we find?
Yeah. And I think that it is just taking that moment to actually think about your client and what it is that you're actually delivering. So there's 2 things I want to say there. So one is like, what is the end goal? So if they were to come to you, ideal client, you think of them in your mind, and we want to actually, there's lots of these like client avatars. And again, like, it's probably the last thing I would ever do is a client avatar, but I want to know who my ideal client is. I want to know what they would inquire with me for. I'd want to know the language that they're using. And often you've already got them in your business, unless you're very, very, very new. But even then, think about who would you love to have. And if you can almost name them and be like, it's John, he works in this business, he's been there for this long, he has this challenge in this team, then they're the people then we want to speak to, and that's how we want to communicate with them. And so we want to then work our steps back. So if we were going back to like kind of day one, for me in my business right now, we do sales audits. That's our phase 1. So of a sales audit, that is a paid service. So if I was going to do a DIY sales audit, that might be what I give away. And what we've got to work out is a sales audit the language that somebody would use? Now, at the moment it's audits are buzzwords at the moment. But if I then looked at that and said, well, okay, well, if the DIY audit is the thing that people would download, I could test it, as Jordan would say. So yeah, we've been working together for a while. And so, using the example there is that I would have like 4 different variations of the title or of the name of the PDF. And then we then see, because then the system will then tell us, or Jordan will tell you, what is actually performing the best. And so it's actually coming back to those stages. But the second thing I want to say is that it's got to be driven with so much value that they are amazed that you're giving this away for free. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people miss out. We might do that beautiful process of here's the end goal and here's the 7 steps to get there. So let me give away step 1 for free. And that may be a DIY order. It might be a self-assessment. It might be we run a sales skills scorecard, try and say that fast. But that is that's something free. So how do I make that someone can download it, run through it and get the results populated without me needing to do anything? But how do we give the most amount of value? So once they've done that, for me, the leads that I work with are high value. So I don't need 100 leads. I'm quite happy with 10 and that's probably me done. Yeah. So if I look at those 10 leads, if I can tailor some of those responses, they get an automated response, but I add more value by sending them a tailored recommendation of my 3 things that they should do internally, they're going to be like, wow, if we get this for free, imagine what it would be like if we paid for it.
Yeah.
And that's often the mistake, is that we do that work, we give the freebie of the 100 new followers in 5 days, but it has to be 200 followers. It has to be like insane value because we're now prepared to give our data and our details, which is becoming more difficult to capture. Yeah. But then secondly, we're giving our time by actually running through your workbook or running through, the information that's being given. So I think forget that it needs to be really strong, but it actually needs to also deliver, because if it doesn't deliver, even though it's free, they will never work with you because they're not getting the same value.
Yeah. And I think, I love what you said about imagine if this is the free thing, imagine how good, the paid service is, because so many people, when I tell people, hey, you have to put together, something of value, it has to be something that people get something out of, you have to share knowledge. The biggest pushback I get is people saying but that's my knowledge. I don't want to give away too much. But that's what that's part of my program. That's part of my service. And if I give that away, then they don't need me. They 100% still need you. It's the biggest thing. And I think we've spoke about this before, your socials, my socials. If you sat down and watched every single video that myself and Harriet have ever posted, listened to every single podcast, downloaded every template, you probably wouldn't need to come to the workshops, to be honest. You can save yourself the money if you've got the time to do that. But we know that by giving away that knowledge, we're giving so much away for free that people are like, wow, this is the free stuff. Imagine how good the workshop is. And it's really good, just FYI. But, and I think that's probably to what you said of imagine how good the paid is. If your free thing is not very good and you're like, oh, I don't want to give away too much, I'm just going to make this kind of a bit, I'm just going to give away one piece of value, or I don't want to give them too much. It's not going to work.
No. So just don't do it in the first place. Then, I would say, unless you are prepared to do it and really give it that the emphasis and the information that it deserves. Because again, we're there to add value, and if we've paid for that lead, so come back to that value piece, and also how much you're paying. If you're paying, let's say for argument's sake, $20 for that lead, and then they've gone through it and then they've thought it was rubbish because you only gave them 5% when you should have given them the 50%, then we then also need to be mindful that you've just spent $50 and potentially just flushed it down the toilet. Yeah. Because there's no point in putting it out there if it's not good enough. And I think that circles back to what we were saying about adding that value, because we have seen it before where people want to just go, no, I just want to provide this value. I just want not value. I just want to provide this lead. I want to ask for this information. And what we see is a lot of traffic, because they're like, oh, interesting. I've not seen this brand before. I've not seen this thing. And then actually when they go through it, they're not prepared because they don't see enough value in them giving their name and email address. And sometimes we think that it's because we want to go fast, isn't it? And it's we want to get there quickly, when actually that's not what works, is it?
No. And I think the thing that I'm really excited about actually for the online workshop, and probably the biggest change we've made since the Perth workshops, is splitting the day. So the Perth workshops were one day. It was a big day. It was an awesome day, and people did get their campaigns live. But what we really wanted to do was give people more time to exactly do that. Think about what is that value they're going to give, have the time to go away and create something that was value driven and amazing, and something they could put in ads, and were really, confident that this is what was going to drive people to give their data. And so we've split it into 2 half days. So basically you will break at step 2 and you can go away for a week, get everything you need to ready, take the time to think about that PDF, take the time to really like jam pack it with as much value as possible, that when you come back the next week for part 2, you've got it already. You can put ads out and be really confident in that thing is going to generate leads.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, a lot of those in the one-day workshop, obviously we guide them through a lot of that, and there's a whole host of templates because we like to give some extra value. And so they can actually design that there and then. But I think as well, it can get quite distracting. And, everybody's different in terms of their creative side. And I work with you, Jordan, because I am not that creative. And actually, I've been told I shouldn't really say that because apparently I am creative.
Yeah.
In my own way, my own little sales way. But I think, from that design perspective, that would consume my entire afternoon because I'd be like, I don't know how to do that. And here's my Canva template, but what colors, where are my brand colors? And does this look right? And Jordan always changes every time we do a presentation. I give her the presentation and she makes it look nice and then sends it back to me. So I need that in my life. And I think, again, being able to go away and actually think about that and go back and ask the business as well, because we had marketing, specialists in there, but we also had business owners as well as sales. We had salespeople in there, which I love.
Yep.
And so I think it's a real mix of people that are now responsible for things like ads. And especially when we uncover the fact that you can do it yourself, if you've got the resources and if you just want to test it. And I think a lot of people that have come through to us, because obviously from my side, we're generating organic sales and we're going out to market directly, want to try something else. And this is an opportunity to do it. It's low risk. It's low cost from an investment perspective, and you're able to then actually try it and see for yourself. And so I guess really to talk about some of the results that we were able to achieve. And I think there's probably 2 or 3 that I think come to both of our minds around what was generated. So do you want to maybe talk through them? Because it's leads and numbers, and I think you're going to do it much better justice than I will.
Yes, my favorite part. There was, I guess, 3 that were really exciting to hear. And we do have 2 follow-up calls for the online course. We had a follow-up call, I think, for the Meta ads about 3 or 4 weeks after. And then for the LinkedIn ads, we had a follow-up call 2 weeks after, just to see where everyone was at and share those results. So the first one that I think is a really interesting one to share was Ash. And Ash has an interior design company, and she was really trying to generate leads. Her service is quite a high value service. She's looking for kind of higher end clientele who are looking for interior design services, both for business, offices, and home. She was looking for a way to generate those leads. So she worked through part 1, understood who her ideal clients were, and the value kind of driven, PDF that she came up with was all around design trends, because she realized a lot of people are trying to figure out, what are the design trends at the moment? What should I be looking at? What should I be doing? So she developed a really awesome, I think it was, the 7 top design trends of 2024. And launched that campaign, spent $100 and got 23 leads, which is awesome. So, quick maths, $4.40 or so, $4.40 maybe a lead, which, and we go back to that budgeting side of things, $4.40 a lead. If she can convert one of those leads and that turns into a $30,000 job, amazing. Like that's a huge, huge effort and massive success. So her job is now, okay, how do we convert those leads? And one of the questions she asked and one of the things she came to the follow-up call with, which, and I'll throw back over to you, Harriet, for this one. I thought this was really interesting because she had got everyone to download this PDF, which was a great first step. And then the next thing she did was email and say like, hey, I saw you downloaded the PDF. If you want to grab a coffee and chat through, here's a link to schedule in some time. And you had some good feedback for her. Which I can just pass over to you and you can talk through. But I think it's a really interesting one because it's a big thing of what we talk about, of what that follow-up process is.
Yes, yeah, so. Absolutely. And I think what we've seen there was that obviously, the PDF spoke to people, spoke to her ideal audience. She got the downloads. The automated download happened. Then the follow-up email came. And with that, then she's adding more value because in her world, she wants to get in front of people. She wants to buy you a coffee. She genuinely cares about your design goals, about your home goals. And I can actually talk to that because I'm one of her clients. And she is absolutely insane at the work that she does and the detail and the service that she goes to. And I really feel like that needs to ooze through all of her, value-added PDFs and documentation and communication. And by adding the coffee piece in her world, she's being like, I'm giving you more value, have a coffee with me and I'll tell you everything you need to know about homes and designs. But to the consumer, the ideal client, it feels too much. we go back to the dating analogy. We've asked you out for a date, or we've asked to buy you a drink before we go bowling. And now we're at the marriage proposal stage before we've even kind of got to know each other. And so when we think of that position, we talk about the touch points that are required to convert a cold opportunity. Do you remember what the number is, Jordan?
7. I feel like I'm in a pop quiz. I'm sweating.
Just checking she's been listening. So yes, it's 7 to 15 touch points. And so 7 is, I think it's actually an average number, but the 7 to 15 is taken from so many data points that we track as part of our business to be able to understand, how many communication points we need to be doing. And how do we do that without being spammy? Because that is my number one question or pushback is, okay, have you followed up with the leads? And maybe I'll share a little bit more on that in a moment. But when it comes to these touch points, it's about don't try and rush the order. Don't try and get straight in at meeting 1, meeting 2. Try and have those conversations, add more value. And so my recommendation at that point is, did you get the ebook? And maybe refer to like the most popular trend based on your knowledge or based on your feedback. So instead of offering the coffee, although it is high value, they're not ready for that yet. So come back to then, did you get the download? Page 7's our client's favorite, or I absolutely love the rug theme that's going on, or the color theme that, that we're seeing, or this shift from, and even I know this one, from grey to stone. And so, my laundry's now stone. So everything else is grey because I do love grey. And I did it, back when grey was in. And so I think now I'm going to start thinking about the stone trend, or maybe just wait and maybe I'll stay grey and I'll be trending back then.
In about 10 years.
Ash will be able to tell me whether I'm right or not. And so really, if we look through that, that's really, what we're looking for is we just want to know more about that and more information. And after that, is there and I know some of the other collateral that, Ash has got, but maybe there at that point, it's then like, a rug size guide. So then that you can do it yourself, because before we invest in an interior designer, we want to try and do it ourselves.
And realize it's really hard.
We want to waste the money first and realize that we've actually got it totally wrong and that nothing quite works in that space. And then then we call in the professionals. And unfortunately, that's what happens everywhere. If you think about from an ads perspective, we often get phone calls and conversation pieces when they've burnt a few $1,000s and they're sick and tired of being told that leads work, that lead ad campaigns work when in their view they don't. And then they come to somebody rather than going, let's start here. It's the quickest, cheapest, most cost-effective way of doing it, but we are all human and we all work in that way. If we think of life, I always give the example of home alarms. Nobody really uses, I have a home alarm. No one really uses home alarms until they have a break-in, until they have a problem. And then they're like, probably should have turned the home alarm on, or we probably should have had one installed. And often it comes at the price of being in pain. When we relate that back to sales, is what is the pain point and how do we relate it back? And so tying that back into, where are we going with this, Harriet? But tying that back into, this journey is that actually we've got to try a few things first. So if we can give value and they go away and they do the rug size guide and they nail it, great. But do you know what? When they're ready to do their next room and they don't want to do it themselves, or they have no idea how to style their walls, then they will come to you because you added the most value. So think about that journey of those 7 to 15. It doesn't have to happen overnight. It doesn't have to happen in the next 3 weeks, but it will happen over time as you build those relationships. And so don't try and jump in all at once. Don't offer the coffee or the meeting straight away, because although it is value, we recognize that it's not necessarily the perceived value of the consumer. And we therefore need to nurture that sequence a little bit further.
I think, we test things ourselves all the time to try to, give examples and just see what works and what doesn't. And we even found this a couple of months ago. We're like, why don't we test putting out some ads for yourself for putting out a free kind of 15-minute, I think it was a 15-minute call or
an assessment of LinkedIn, wasn't it?
LinkedIn assessment. Audit, profile audit. And we were like, let's test it, put it out there and see what works. And again, love testing. And it got a lot of clicks and people were interested, but they weren't going through. And when we thought about it, we're like, do you know what? Actually, it's probably, maybe it's like third date material.
Yes.
Maybe we need to pull it back. Maybe that can be the title of this podcast. It's like dating and sales and marketing. But it was, and it was interesting for us to test and kind of, sometimes we do things where we're like, we should know better than that.
Yeah.
But we put it out there and we thought, let's just see what happens and see if people are interested. And yeah, straight away we looked at the data and we were like, you know what, it's probably too soon. Let's kind of bring it back and put something that's maybe 3 steps before this.
Yeah.
So, I think it goes across everything. And like you said, don't be afraid of helping people do things themselves. And my husband and I spend a lot of money because we're like, nah, we can do that cheaper ourselves, and it's not cheaper. But it's a really good way. I find one of the easiest sales tools I have is getting people to try to do it themselves, because very, very quickly they will come to you for help. Now, obviously, we teach people how to do it themselves in a way that they actually can do it themselves. But for a lot of the things that people do, interior design is a very good example. I have tried to do interior design myself for years, and every room just doesn't look quite right. It just doesn't get there.
You need Ash. That's
yes,
what you need.
I do. Ash, if you're listening, I'll give you a call.
If anybody needs an interior design, we'll pop the link below.
Yeah.
A little plug there for Ash. But I think, with her then, and so I think what she took away from your advice of that, of, tweaking the ads and what else you could try, is then going back. And I think 2 things that I really enjoyed of what you shared was, one, that you don't have to then stop the ad. Like once you've got, 23 leads, that is not your entire audience done. Unless you can only deal with 23 people at once, then great. But if you then look then to the next step, your advice to her was now turn it back on again and maybe try a different variant, because I think the beauty of the ads, platforms, regardless of which one, they feed the most amount of traffic. I know this. They feed, the most amount of traffic through to the ad that's performing the best.
Yes.
So then what you can then start doing is turning off those ads and then start tweaking the ads to then be able to then try different ones, so that you're just making it better. And if I think back to, everything we're trying to do in business and in sales and in marketing, is if we can improve by 1% every single time, imagine how much better we're going to be in 3 months' time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, to me, on every follow-up call, and I don't know where this thinking came from, and it's not something that I even realized people were thinking until the follow-up calls, is everyone was like, cool, now I have to come up with a new ad. They're like, what should I do next? I'm like, the same thing. Like that's the whole point, is you prove something works and then you keep doing it. Yeah. You scale it. Like if you've spent $100, now spend $500. And if it keeps working, cool, put another $500 in. You don't have to only spend $100 and then come up with something new every week.
Yeah.
There's been clients I've worked with who have been running the same lead gen campaigns for 6 months, especially when you've got a big audience, whether you're targeting Perth or Australia-wide or global, that audience is quite large. Unless you've got a very, very, very niche, product that you've only got 500 people in your audience, you can run the same thing for a very long time. So that was really interesting to me, because I didn't realize people were thinking that they were going to have to come up with a new idea every week. I was like, guys, no.
Same thing.
This is too much work. Yes. Work smarter, not harder. So yeah, that was I think one of the big takeaways for me anyway, of kind of making sure people understood, no, we're setting things up for longevity, not to make more work for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, that was a great example. And we had then another one, which was Charlotte as well, who generated 21 leads, was it?
Yeah.
And she, again, it was a similar concept. She already had something within the business. It was, and that was your idea. I think it was an email series, wasn't it? Turned it into a PDF, into something that people could download and actually access. And then there was other things that she'd come up with. Do you want to speak to some of those? Yeah,
so Charlotte was interesting because Charlotte was doing LinkedIn ads, which is, slightly different to Meta. Normally we find LinkedIn ads are a bit more expensive, generally just because it's, typically B2B. And so the value of that conversion is probably going to be higher. Quality over quantity is normally what I say with LinkedIn. But Charlotte was an interesting one because she was trying to target parents. And Charlotte has an amazing program called Gen Future, which is all about, future readiness for young people and helping them figure out what they want to do. But typically the people that pay for that are the parents, not the 16-year-old who isn't going to pay to help themselves with the program. So she went to LinkedIn and had a PDF about having career conversations with your children. And the creative was really interesting. It was all about kind of almost talking to people in a LinkedIn environment. And I really love when people do this, where they think about the context where someone sees an ad. So the ads, like, you're obviously a successful professional. You're out here on LinkedIn. Do you want your children to follow in your footsteps? Whatever that success may look like. Well, here's a guide to having career conversations with them to help them figure it out. So nailed the kind of understanding like a parent and what they're thinking and what they're going through. And I think her leads, she spent $150 to get 21 leads. Again, my maths isn't that good.
Quick.
I think it's about $6 to $7 from memory, $6 to $7 per lead. And her programs are $600 each. So again, when we do kind of the quick math of, okay, it's a $6 lead, we're going to get 100 leads for $600. If we can convert one of those 100 leads, we've made our money back. And, 1% conversion rate, very achievable. So I think that was, probably a good example of thinking a little bit differently, because LinkedIn is such a B2B space, but using it, I guess it's against what I said earlier in the podcast, not using it for B2B, but using it because she knew the context of the channel and kind of what people were thinking about when they were on the channel, which I thought was a really, different way of thinking.
Yeah. And it's smart because you're thinking about it, because we said before about, your B2B and your consumer, but thinking about, okay, well, her ideal audience is a consumer. It's a student effectively, but we now know that the students aren't necessarily paying for it. And maybe they're being guided by parents. And what are parents? Are they going to be in a business on LinkedIn potentially? And so by testing the two platforms, because she actually came to both sessions. So by testing the two platforms, she can then decide what yields the best result. And if she's attacking, or from ours, attacking maybe not quite the right word, but if she's then approaching those two markets, she can then look at the student and also the parent on Facebook, and then on LinkedIn, then focus on a parent or a parent that is in a professional capacity, and look at those both, and look at then how do you build awareness? Because as you said before, that paid ads really support the organic ads, which really support the reach and the awareness, which often is what we want to see. In business. And I know, there's a client that you and I have both worked with, and I did it from an organic lead perspective. And the feedback they were given was like, who's doing your content? And they were like, our team is. And they were like, no, but who's writing the content? They were like, our team is. Yeah. And so by empowering people to write content that adds value, the lens is different. Rather than being like, buy this, do this, we offer this solution or this service. Yeah. It's like, hey, did you know that here's 3 ways that you can do this thing? And although to you it may feel really basic, it's sometimes the most basic foundational, level information that you're like, really? Am I not going to seem silly, sharing this? That gets the most traction, because we assume that, everyone knows everything that we're talking about. And actually, there's a reason why we're specialists in our field, is because we need to take them on that journey. And that just is part of the ads piece. But when we think of ads as we just want leads and we just want to get as many in as we can, we're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite examples is you with the green screen on Instagram. For those of you that don't know, you can do a green screen effect on Instagram and put something behind you. And to me, this is like, assumed knowledge that everyone has. And you will all have this. Like, everyone has assumed knowledge from their job. And Harriet was like, how are you doing this green screen? I can't figure it out. And, to me, I do it every day. Like, that's just so simple. But I now know, okay, that's not like general knowledge. A lot of people don't even know where that is in Instagram and how to do it. And so if I just share that tip straight away, it's like something so easy. People are like, I've always wanted to know how to do this. And actually, after we had that conversation,
you did it, didn't you?
I did a TikTok workshop not long after that. And I was like, I'm going to put the green screen thing in there, because I think a lot of people see it and don't know how to do it after talking to yourself. And literally people were like, I've always wanted to have people do this. Like, it was like, out of the whole 3-hour workshop, I think that was the thing people was most excited about. And I was like, man, there's all this other value.
The hours that you and I spent together, that was the most amount of information I've ever had. It's insane. But then you're able to then go, light bulb moment. I guess really similar to what you just said before around the feedback in those follow-up calls was that I think I have to change my ad. You're like, what? Like, why? Like, why do you think you have to change that? But it makes sense, right? You've done it. You've kind of ticked the box. Next, I've got my 21 leads. That's all I'm going to get out of that. Let's me now create something else. And I think then we think we've got to create so much work for ourselves. Yeah. But actually, just come back to the basics, the fundamentals. Where do we need to start and take them on that journey?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Sure. And so let's just touch on follow-up, because it wouldn't be a sales podcast without a bit of follow-up conversation. And I guess we've talked about that for the, results that, that Ash has received, but also then seeing about the follow-up process. But a lot of the time, and I think, looking at some of the examples of the leads that were generated from other people, and we had others that we haven't necessarily shared through our testimonials, But, we had another participant that generated, I think she got 19 or 20 leads. So it was all around that kind of 20 and all around that $100, $150 mark.
Yeah.
And she was saying, I asked her about her follow-up and she's like, oh no, I haven't done anything. And I was like, sorry, what? And she explained, she's like, oh no, she's like, I don't want to be pushy. And it's, it's the icky, the pushy, the sleazy, the salesy. Nobody wants to feel like that. Yeah. Neither do I, surprisingly. But I will pick up the phone to anybody. I'll email anybody. I will follow up because I'm always doing it with value or with adding value in mind. And so what happens then if we use the scenario, I've downloaded something, I've seen value, or let me guess, you've probably downloaded it and it's sitting in your inbox like so many of my downloads. And so you're there, you've spent the money on the lead, but your valuable piece of content is just floating in their inbox, never to be found again. And so if we don't follow up, we're actually doing them a disservice. We've actually now got their data and they actually haven't seen any value from you. So if you do nothing, you never existed. You just paid $5 for that lead, never to be seen again. And like I said before, you may as well just flush it down the toilet. So if we then use an example of where we follow up first of, did you get the download, coming back to the reference of the design trends, and let's then make sure that they've received it, and let's then make sure that they've actually been able to find the most compelling design trend or the most popular design trend or the most popular color or something that we want them to really direct their focus on. If all they've got is 2 minutes in their day to look at the download that they have in their inbox. The next step then from there then, is there more value that you can add? Is there more information that you can share? Because, I spoke to Active Campaign, I think I share this in a lot of our workshops, is that Active Campaign shared that you can send as many emails as you like, and if they add value, you will never be unsubscribed from.
1 million.
1 million emails a day. And so what then I would suggest there then is that if you work that on, let's say every couple of weeks, you're sending something that's specific to them, that's of value. Now in these early stages, because, I appreciate that, people may be listening to this and be like, I haven't got time to do that. I've got, I'm running a business, or I've got all these other functions, or I've got other things to be doing. But if we're testing, and if we've got 21 leads, why not personalize the shit out of those 21 leads? Why not really define them? Why not let's look at Jordan. Let's look at what Jordan wants. Let's look at what Jordan likes. I know she's downloaded it, so she's got some level of interest. But knowing what I know about my other clients, how can I add more value to you? And let's do it from that personalization, from a very manual perspective, because we're all super quick to personalize and automate, but we're not quick enough to actually take the moment to actually understand what is going to work. And if we automate too quickly, we run the risk of just continually burning these leads and not really knowing what's working. And so I think the follow-up piece is so important that it has to happen. It has to have its place. Otherwise, don't do it in the first place. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, and this might be a mindset thing, I don't know, but when people run paid ads and they get their leads, it's almost like they forget that's actually a person that has given you their email and has shown interest. It's like, oh, it's just this like list of names and emails, but like they don't really exist. They're just here. And I'm like, if someone emailed you, if you had an inbound lead from your website, you would get back to them. You would literally reply to them within a day because it's a potential customer. Yet for some reason, when you get leads via paid ads, people are like, they're just a low value lead, or they're not a lead I'm not even going to follow up with. And it's like, but it's the same. Like if someone gave you a name and email and said, hey, I might be a potential customer, you would go back to them. So I don't know why there's this kind of mindset thing of like, they're just a make-believe. Maybe it's because they're not connected. I don't know. I don't know why that mindset exists.
I've never seen it that way. I've never thought about it in that way. Yeah. Because you're dead right, is that if you got an inbox lead that just says, hey Harriet, hey Jordan, I'm interested in your service, you're like, done. Yeah. Like, let me pick up the phone, let me have that conversation. Yeah. But then as you said, that lead is, and I guess really, I think where that comes from though, is that the lead isn't saying, I want to buy your thing. And so I think then as somebody that's not sales programmed,
not Harriet,
if you're not me, if you're not necessarily sales, doesn't come naturally, and you're still kind of defining what sales looks like to you because it looks like different to everybody. And maybe then at that point, then the thought of picking up the phone when it's like, well, you haven't told me you want to buy anything. Well, they've shown interest and they've downloaded enough, and they know that by giving you their email or their phone number, the chances are you're going to ring or email them. And so we need to follow along that journey. And even the lowest touch point of email, which, I talk about people sitting behind emails and not really communicating properly, we don't learn as much. Absolutely, that is the case. However, what we are able to do is communicate, add more value. And when they're ready, they will have this whole host of information, and you're able to then use a call to action throughout those pieces of communication. You don't have to wait to like point 15 and then be like, hey, do you want to buy something from me? And, it could just be that coffee. Yeah. It could be that, we actually are hosting a workshop. We are doing this, and make it relevant. The challenge comes when you've offered a PDF that means nothing to your business. That would be really difficult, because you'd be like, but I've downloaded this, and why on earth would I need that? Or if we've gone too far along and kept asking for something without giving enough. And so never be afraid of too much value. I think, I'm saying it, but if you don't want to listen to me as a salesperson, then, Active Campaign is saying it. And I think, and you're showing that from the marketing side as well. And so therefore I feel like people will listen to you more than me.
But even in the workshop, what you said, which I think was kind of a light bulb moment for people, because they think, oh, but I don't have that much. I only have one PDF. I've only got one template. I don't have enough value. And you were saying, you can share, hey, I listened to this really good podcast the other day. The Sell Like You podcast. It was amazing. You should listen to it. Or like, I read this really good book. I think it would be really helpful. Like, it doesn't have to be your own templates, your own PDFs or anything like that. You can share value that comes from other people. Sometimes I actually find, in a marketing sense anyway, I think about blogs where people share like the top 10 XYZ, and you're one of them, but you're sharing 9 others. It almost adds credibility, because it's you saying like, I'm not just going to share my things. I'm actually here to help you and share things that will just be helpful to you, not just my stuff, everyone's stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually think it does a really good job. And when you said that, I think a lot of people are like, oh, actually, yeah, I can share this podcast I listen to. I can share these 3 blogs that I read that are really helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're worried about not having enough value yourself, I think that was a really good point.
Yeah, awesome. And there is so much data and collateral and information out there. And even if it's like a saw this and thought of you vibe, you're able to do that. And even if you're connected with somebody, if you are, if you're focused on locality, so, you might have been somewhere, you might have seen their billboard, you might have gone for a coffee with somebody and they might have mentioned your name. So you can use that and connect with those pieces, because we're just humans at the end of the day, and human connection wins every time. And so if you can connect on something, they don't have to buy from you that day, that week, that month, but go on a journey with them, and they will benefit from your knowledge as much as you will benefit from understanding and listening to what is actually their problem, their challenge, or their goal. And that's really then what we're coming back to is the fundamentals of selling, which is people to people.
And I think it's a great segue actually into Jackie, who was someone that came to follow-up call, and what she really got out of the workshop was that sales, that kind of follow-up, and saying like, how can I help this person? And, she told us a great story. I feel like Harriet was literally beaming on the Zoom call of pride.
So happy.
But it was all about that, she had a lady get in contact, and a lot of Jackie's programs, Jackie does like public speaking training and helping people be more confident. But her programs were quite long. They were like 3 months, I think, or 6 months, had different programs. And a lady came who was like, I need to be on stage in 4 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it was. And Jackie took Harriet's advice, which was like, do everything you can to convert that lead, and was like, leave it with me, went away, put a package together of kind of this like quick fire, look, let's get you on stage in 4 weeks, and actually converted that lady and another lady with the same package. And it was all about really like listening, like you said, understanding the person, talking to the person, figuring out what they want, and then being able to come to the table and say, hey, I've got a solution for you that fits what you need, at the right price point, the right time. And Harriet's beaming as I'm
like, tell me the story again.
But it was, and I think that was like, to me, it was very, very cool at the follow-up calls to kind of hear both the learnings from the paid side and the ad side, and then also the sales side, because like we see like so many times people do one part really well and they completely forget the other, or they're kind of doing both of them half-hearted. And so I think to see people were taking away both sides, people that needed the sales assistance were really, really, excelling there, and vice versa. I think that was, to me and to Harriet, of course, one of the most exciting ones was just someone that really took the sales side and went all in on that.
Yeah. And as well, I think we kind of forget, because we were so focused on the lead gen and the opportunities and the cost per lead and then the follow-up process, that then to see that somebody's kind of taken it and gone, actually, I can apply this anywhere, which you can, and applied it and seen success. And that's why I've got the massive smile on my face. When she was sharing that, but also just reminiscing on that, because, sales is scary. Sales can feel really hard. Business can feel really hard. And, and there's so many reasons we can give a million reasons under the sun why things are happening, why things are slow, why things are not working, and it doesn't work for us, and it just isn't, it's just my industry, or it's just my business. Untrue. Everybody can do it. Everybody can sell in any capacity. You've just got to understand the framework, the methodology, apply it to the way that you want to sell and the way that you want to show up. But know that ultimately the end goal is transformation. And so whether that is, through a service or through a product, the outcome is the outcome goal for the customer. And really you get to be part of that journey. And I think that's probably why you and I are so happy about sharing all of these results, because we are so passionate about both sides of that. And I think the reason why we've come together for so many offerings for our clients is because we understand both sides of it, and we know that we specialize in those areas, but they're so complementary. And when we are working with people, they are so well supported, I think, as well. So, and so there's a couple of questions that we grabbed, because I'm mindful of our listeners' time, and we could talk sales marketing all day long, and we will be back. And there's a couple of questions I've got here that are good, because I get asked a lot about marketing, and I know that you get asked a lot about sales. So I've pulled out a couple of questions here that I think would be good just to answer. And I know we've answered quite a lot today, but I think maybe just two of these to go through to wrap us up for today. So one of the questions is with regards to what is Meta Ads Manager? And the second question to that is how much do Meta Ads cost? And I think we've kind of covered that. But Meta Ads Manager, what is it? How do people get started? I think that's probably a good place to go.
Yeah, so Meta Ads Manager is basically the back end of Meta. Now, some of you may have boosted posts before. That's kind of an in-between offering from Meta. You don't get the full suite of products. You don't get the full suite of offerings. So Meta Ads Manager is your back end. It's where you set up all your campaigns. There is a lot of things you can do within Meta Ads Manager. It is a bit of a minefield, but obviously we take you through that whole thing in a nice tour. But by doing your ads within Ads Manager, there is a whole kind of new world of offerings within there. That's where we set up our lead generation ads, our lead generation forms. We can download our leads there. We can, do all of our testing, upload a heap of different creative. So it's basically almost the homepage. If you think about a dashboard, if you're running your campaigns, log in there each day, have a quick check, make some edits. It's effectively a dashboard for your ads.
And do they need to have, obviously, like you mentioned there about forms and everything else, there's so many, I think this is the challenge now, there's so many products and solutions that we're all using as business owners. And is there anything else that's complementary to that, or can we run the entire campaign through Meta Ads campaign? Yeah,
so I think the best thing about, and the campaign that we go through and make sure that everyone knows how to do, is the lead generation campaign, which doesn't require you to have anything else. So the entire process happens within Meta. So the person clicks on the ad, it opens a form, they fill in their information. It's like, great, thank you very much. And they can download their PDF there. So from a setup perspective, it's really seamless. You don't have to go and set up landing pages and tracking and have everything talking to each other. It is meant to be really kind of like set it up, go, don't worry about anything else. You do need a privacy policy. Now, if you were as a business, do not have a privacy policy. That is your job today anyway, to go and make a privacy policy. That is the only thing that you will need to do outside of Meta or LinkedIn.
Yeah. And you're so proud when groups are like, I've got mine.
It's like you with Jackie, it's me with privacy policies. I'm like, thank you. Yeah.
Geeking out over here. And so second question is around, where do LinkedIn ads appear?
So LinkedIn ads appear typically on the feed. So when you're scrolling through LinkedIn, you may not have noticed it before, but now that I've told you, just keep an eye out for a little sponsored tag. Generally, it's kind of every 4 posts or so, there'll be an ad. There are other ad formats you can try within LinkedIn. You may have got a sponsored mail before, which is a paid for, mail inbox, mail message.
In mail.
There you go. Harriet's the LinkedIn person, not me. So there are other placements that you can use, but generally when we're running lead generation ads, they will always appear in the feed.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool. So we've covered both sides. I think everyone's going to be happy with those. And I guess really from with here as well, we are going to give away a couple of freebies from today's episode. Yeah. And I think, one of the key things that I love about what you put together, because you are such a genius in design, is you're going to give away the Canva template for ads. So if someone's out there and you want to have a go and you're not really quite ready, you want to go and do it yourself and have a go, or if you already got something set up, but you actually, I could be better, from listening to this podcast. Well, number one, let us know. We'd love to hear how you're getting on and how your ads are tracking. But we've also got the Canva template download. And then we've also then got the Replicate Ideal Clients template. So that you're able to then actually identify who your ideal clients are using people that you're already working with as well. So I think there's heaps of value to really unpack and really implement as well into businesses.
I guess there's probably one, and I wanted to ask this question, and you've kind of answered it, but only because I get asked this question all the time, and I know I've said it to you and you slapped me across the face. if someone is going to, come to this workshop or try sales stuff themselves, or kind of putting together their processes, do you have any advice or anything that you could tell people who are I'm not a salesy person, or and I know you kind of said about the spamminess and whatnot, but what is your go-to if someone says, I can't do this, I'm just not a salesy person? Do you have any other advice outside of what? I'm tell me.
Tell me, because I am not salesy. And Jordan is not salesy. And Jordan's I'm not really a salesperson. I'm have you followed up that lead? No. So she's my worst student. So we go
to events together and someone's what are you doing? I'm marketing. And Harriet's no, I'm going to sell for you.
Yeah, I will do your pitch. But I think really, from there it's looking back. Number one is that you're focusing too much on yourself. And as soon as we are fearful, and I spoke at a panel last night, and I had, some great feedback, and give me a box to stand on and talk about sales for 2 hours, hello, dream night. Yeah. But, had people come up to me and talk to me about, the way that I speak and the way that, I share that information. And I said, the thing I had to overcome is that I have to stop caring about what other people think. And I think that that's my number one rule in life. But I think when it comes back to sales it's really much focused on actually how can we help other people? And the communication is just two people talking. And what you'll find is that the most beautiful sales conversations come from knowing what it is that your challenge is and being so passionate about what it is that you offer that you just want to give value. And so if you ever speak to somebody and they are struggling with something you can fix, or that you have a thing that does that solves that problem, offer that to them. Be look, I have this really cool PDF. It's totally free. And look, I'll send it through to you. We've had some great results from clients. Focusing on the thing that you offer, the value, but then just do what I did there. And I'm going to highlight what I did there is that I told a story. And so if you are ever unsure, stop talking about yourself, stop saying I'm great, I do all these wonderful things, and say, I've got clients that really love this component, that really saw value in this. And it's free. It's something I can send it to you if with your permission, I'll shoot it over through to you this evening. Most people will say yes. Most people will say thank you. And what you're waiting for then at that point is to give enough value that often we don't have to ask for the sale. And a lot of people say to me, how do we ask for the sale? And you actually generally don't really need to, because most people will come back and then say, oh, that was really cool. What else do you offer? And I've got an email sitting in my inbox from last night that says, how do we get started? And that's the best email, to receive. But all I've done is add value. All I've done is share information. And so think back to stories, think back to value add, which is all we've talked about today. And let's think then about how we can actually bring that round and make it meaningful for them.
I'll remember this.
Yes. So we'll test Jordan on that.
Yes, I'm learning.
So it's been a jam-packed session. It's been a jam-packed episode. And, I think it's one that I think so many people are going to get value from. And my tip for podcasts, I'm a big podcast listener and I'm a note taker, is that maybe just go back into that. There's we'll chuck some links, in the show notes so that you can get that value. And if you want to reach out to us and share your challenges, and if you want to join us for our online workshop, we've got 2 running in July, and we'd absolutely love to have, every type of business is welcome. We've got some really interesting people already signed up, and it's not going to be a huge group. So if you want to come along, if you want to learn, if you want to walk away with some cool tips and some leads at the end of it, then I'll make sure that the link is there in the show notes. And anything else from you, Jordan, to wrap up with?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've covered it all very well. But no, as Harriet said, I think to me, the online workshop is really exciting because of that split, because it's going to give you the time to really nail that value-driven kind of download or, whatever it is that you're going to give away. So I'm really excited about the July workshops. And yeah, it would be awesome to have different industries, different types of people. I think for us, it's always a fun challenge to kind of figure out how we can get every type of person leads. So the more the merrier in terms of industries. But yeah, as you said, we are keeping it kind of a smaller group to make sure we can give everyone the help that they need. So if you're keen, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for joining me, Jordan, and letting us talk for a copious amount of minutes around sales and marketing.
Yes.
And I'm sure we will be back with more fun episodes, jam-packed information as well. This has been the Sell Like You podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.